This year, in light of the theme that the executive committee chose for GYC, we decided it was also the appropriate time for us to take an unashamed stance on our belief in a literal six-day creation as supported by the Bible and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, as a movement, a Seventh-day Adventist young adult, we want to support our church in every way possible, in every single one of its fundamental beliefs, including the belief in a literal six-day creation. Now, we decided to approach this not by looking at it in a scientific way. There are plenty of DVDs and websites and books and a lot of other resources you can get to educate yourself on why science actually does support what the Bible tells us, what our origins are. However, we wanted to give you a different perspective of why creation is important to us as Seventh-day Adventists in different aspects of our lives. So what you're going to be doing is hearing from four different people: a student, a theologian, a scientist, and a voice from the General Conference about why creation is important to us as Seventh-day Adventists. And our goal for this is not just understanding why creation is important and becoming more firm in our own personal stance on that, but also in understanding how to approach this issue with people who we don't agree with, people who believe differently than we are, in a way that is winsome and that will bring glory to our Creator. I believe that creation is important to students for a very specific reason. I think that creation shows us in the Bible our source of our identity and our value. In Genesis it says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them." Now, as a student at a public university, I know that many times people don't tell us that our value comes from the fact that we are created beings. Rather, they tell us our value comes from the grade that we can get in our class. Now, I'm not saying that it's not important for us as students on campuses, whether they be Adventist or public universities, not to be trying to get the best grades in our classes. But we as Seventh-day Adventist young people know that our strongest sense of identity does not come from the grades that we get in the class, but rather from the fact that God is our Creator and He made us in His image. Ellen White writes in the Book of Education, "The world does not need so much men of great intellect as of noble character." So while it is important for us to study hard, I look to creation as the ultimate source of my identity and of my value, knowing that if my grade comes back not the way that I expected, I may need to work harder, but it doesn't diminish my value in God's eyes. Now, there's a second reason why I believe creation is important for students. It's because students deal with it every single day. Now, I grew up in the Adventist church. I went to a Seventh-day Adventist academy in Berrien Springs, Michigan, and I had a biology teacher who knew that not all of his students would go to Adventist universities, but knew that even the ones who went to Adventist universities may encounter evolution in the future. So what he did is he taught us not just creation, but he informed us of the arguments that we would encounter for evolution. And then he went through step by step, showing us why they did not make sense. With all of that evidence clearly laid out in front of me, I could not help but believe in creation. Not only is the Bible very clear about where we come from, to me the evidence for evolution just did not build up. So, when I found myself instead at a secular university as an undergraduate student, imagine my surprise when I started hearing people who said they believed in evolution. The first one I remember was a good friend of mine. She was someone who I was actually having Bible studies with, and she comes to me one day. There was a theme semester on evolution on our campus, and they were talking about why evolution was so important and how great it was that, we reached some wonderful anniversary for it. And so they had special classes at the university that semester dedicated solely to studying evolution. And my friend enrolled in one of these classes. She comes home to me and she tells me one day, "You know what? My professor says you're dangerous." I'm like, "Why would I be dangerous?" She says, "Because you believe in creation." And I was taken aback. How could you believe that me, someone who believes in creation, is dangerous? Don't you know that evolution actually gives the underpinning, a justification for such, horrors as the Holocaust? But I didn't say that. I thought it, I didn't say it. In another class, I was sitting and waiting for the class to begin, and it was a history class. It was not a science class. A student comes running into the classroom and says, Professor, I just read in the newspaper that the majority of Americans do not believe that they evolved from monkeys." And the professor said, "Are you serious? In this day and age?" Me, coming from this Adventist academy that had well prepared me to see that it was intellectually credible to be able to believe in creation, could not believe that the professor could still believe in evolution. But again, I did not confront her on this. And the reason was this: I learned in my time at a secular campus that the best way to win people to Jesus is not to get into arguments, it's not to try to bash things over their head, it's not to blast people or to demean them. Instead, it's by having that noble character, that utmost aim that we have, even above trying to find the best grade in the class. And so I just continued to live out my life. At the end of that semester, I had the highest grade in this professor's class, and she called me into her office to talk about my academic future. She wanted me to pursue research in the same lines that she was going on. She was a historical anthropologist, so evolution was something very close to her heart. And when I told her I did not want to study anthropology, I did not want to study certain types of historical culture, I wanted to study the history of religion, and I wanted to write my thesis on Seventh-day Adventists, she was completely blown away. But I know that it definitely made her second guess the fact that only unintelligent people would believe in creation, because there, sitting in her office, was the most intelligent person in her class that semester who believed in creation. Now, I'm talking from the perspective of a public university student, and I know that that is something that is not necessarily encouraging for all of us, because we want to send our students to the Adventist universities. But the truth of the matter is, the vast majority of Adventist students are on secular universities. Furthermore, even the students who go to Adventist universities are not guaranteed not to have their faith challenged in whether or not creation is actually a valid theory to believe in. And even for those students who do go to Adventist colleges for undergrad, but they want to become a professor in an Adventist university or college, they will most likely have to go to a secular university at some point in their academic career in order to obtain a higher degree. So at some point, the vast majority of Adventist students, whether they go to secular universities or they go to Adventist colleges and universities, will confront evolution in the classroom, and their belief in creation will be challenged. A couple decades ago, there was a group of Adventist students who went to secular universities to gain their education to come back to Adventist colleges and universities. And those professors, or those students then who are now professors, they took the bait. They bought into the idea of evolution. They bought into the idea of higher criticism. And that's why now we're having debates within our own church about whether creation or evolution is the valid theory upon which we know our origins come from. But I am here to tell you today that there's a new generation of Adventist students, a new generation of Adventist students both on secular campuses and on Adventist campuses, who are not ashamed in the gospel and who are not ashamed of the fact that the Bible teaches that we were created in 6 days. And this new generation of Adventist students is going to re-import that truth back into our church. Our current students are the future of how our church will continue to approach this issue. So, I want to leave you with a challenge. For the non-students, I ask that you please pray and encourage those who are students, especially students on secular campuses, but also the ones on Adventist campuses. Pray for the things that they are going to encounter every day, the challenges that they will face, and encourage them. Give them a phone call. Let them know that you support them in what they are doing. Students, be on your guard. Study. Study twice as hard as every other student out there. You're not supposed to just master the material that you have for your class, but you also have to study the Bible to see how it compares with what your professor is telling you so you can discern truth from error. Know what you believe and be unashamed in that belief. Finally, let's all present Jesus accurately and winsomely so that when people see us, they have a clear picture of who Jesus is, and they would more rather get to know who this Creator is.